about 18 months ago on this path, and I reached out to Gail to say, hey, we're doing this work. Do you have any help or resources? But now here I am. So I think there's a lot to be shared across the state and across different communities, especially as in Fort Collins, we're a community of about 171,000. We have very little land left to build new on. And so we're primarily becoming a redevelopment community, which has greater impact on their surrounding businesses that are established there. And so we were really tasked with, from the picture you see on the slides here is a picture of Walnut Street. That's really kind of the jewel of our downtown. Lots of small local businesses along this road, and there was a need to replace 100-year-old water pipes underneath the street. And we did this work. They were closed, fully closed, January and February. And it was, as you can tell, or can imagine, great impacts to those businesses. And so today we're just going to talk about how we were tasked, how my department, Economic Health, which is our economic development arm, was tasked with this, how we got involved, and then the work we've done so far. So with that, I'll also say that Walnut Street here was kind of a pivotal point for us and how our department, Economic Health, is involved in construction mitigation and what we're doing from here on out to bring that business perspective to our colleagues across whether it's utilities or engineering or traffic, but how can we really try to be that business voice, and so how can we support our own colleagues as well. From this, the businesses really rallied together and asked and came to city council meetings and asked, where's Economic Health in this conversation? And so that's really where it all started. Next. Sorry about that. Scope of the impact. So these are actual headlines from our actual community, from our actual newspaper. These are anxiety provoking for me, but something that we have read and come across and have tried to work with the businesses. You see Walnut Street. Campus West is another heavily impacted area right now if you've been to Fort Collins or on the CSU campus with student housing, multifamily housing projects. And so these have become commonplace for us. And really, it can be shocking when you open the paper and you see that, or businesses open the paper, residents, like how much more can we take? And so the city of Fort Collins sees 3,000 traffic control permits a year, which means whether it's an outside contractor, Excel, a private developer, whoever that is pulling a traffic control permit because they're interrupting the right-of-way in some capacity. So 3,000. So the odds of managing some kind of disruption or inconvenience to a business is very high in our community. It can be a shock, as I said. And so, again, we're a hotbed for redevelopment. We're out of land. And so as these, student housing projects come up, or these large multifamily condos and apartments are popping up, it's a lot of strain on the businesses around them. And so we really think of this as this also became a place where how can no loss to business be just as important as safety is to the project manager or whoever's leading that. And so for our project managers or our engineers, safety and on budget and on time are their priorities. And then now we're asking to say, what about no loss to business? And I think that's a hard culture shift for some, but it's something that we feel is just as important. And so how do you weather this shock? How do you absorb the sea of headlines and potential negative feedback? And so one of the saying that we're really trying to adopt as well and push across the organization is how can you be a lightning rod? And so this really comes down to your why. Why is construction mitigation for businesses important in your community? And it can be one of two things. And so one, it can be absorbing that brunt from the business community. So if you can be proactive and put processes in place, which I think a lot of communities are doing. We certainly had quite a bit, but it's just getting everybody in the same room, documenting things and making sure we're consistent across the board was a big piece for us. But how can you really focus on the health of your community? We really, sales tax dollars are the biggest revenue generator for us. So if our businesses are not able to collect those sales tax as they could, it also hurts our entire community. So how are you absorbing shock from the business community, but then also something that we're trying to reframe across our organization is how are you absorbing shock for your own team as well? So if you're a project manager and you're out doing something, and if you hadn't done good engagement at the beginning, it's gonna be hurtful for the project, for the budget. It's probably going to be really hard on that team. For us, we're going through a situation right now where business members went to city council, public comment, they signed petitions. And so it can be daunting for the staff then to have to, defend that project constantly while still engaging, while still getting great feedback, while making these pivots. And so how can you do just that really great engagement on the front end? It's an emotional topic. Very emotional for the businesses. This is their livelihood, and so to try to walk that line of getting your project done, but also taking into account that this is an emotional piece for those businesses. How are we managing both? So really, how do you absorb shock? So with these great clip art examples, how do you go from being shocked, electrified, being caught off guard? You're going along with your project, you think everything's great, this is great for the community, this is going to be wonderful, it's going to be beautiful at the end, but then the businesses kind of can come out mobilized, which they have every right to be, but I think if you're not engaged with them and get caught off guard, it can be surprising and challenging. And so how do you go from that to really being proactive and being able to absorb what's to come? So this is basically how we started. The businesses went to city council and said, why isn't economic health at the table? What can we do to better mitigate? And so we asked the question, how can the city be a better advocate for disrupted businesses? And I'll say that we started as a very naive group. We thought, we'll just put this toolkit together. City council has asked for some checklists and resources. We'll get a group together. We'll meet over the summer, and then everybody can carry on. And that definitely is not how it worked out. Nearly 2 years later, we're still working on this. But first, we really kind of tackled this external side and how can we support the businesses quickly. So we put a cross-functional team together that included utilities, city manager's office, purchasing, engineering, our communications team. We also worked with our downtown development authority. There's an engineering company in town that does a lot of work downtown, and so since they are a business and they're doing these projects, we thought it was helpful to have their perspective, so they were on board. And we kicked off this first meeting by bringing in a business owner who has direct impacts from a lot of this construction going on, and it was a great way to put a face to construction, and that business owner can say, this is me, I'm real life. My family is being impacted by this. And so it really gave folks in our organization that don't have a lot of business contact, that might, be behind the desk quite a bit, that aren't out and engaged, an opportunity to really connect in a human way, that these projects do have great impact, even when the result is wonderful, but how do we get them to survive during that middle piece, during that construction? So as we were putting this toolkit together, we realized that there's a lot of work to do behind the scenes. And so then that's when kind of this other portion came about of what are we doing internally for our own colleagues, and how are we creating tools and resources for each other so that we can have this proactive approach. So really it was about proactive versus prescriptive, because we are trying to have a culture shift, but we were afraid that if it was mandated right off the top, it wouldn't be adopted as easily. And so we're still in this proactive piece. But we were able to create resources that I'll show you here in a bit, checklists and those types of things, so that we can have that proactive approach. So we broke this down into 3 phases because it was pretty daunting at the time. So phase 1 was really this external piece again. So how are we supporting businesses during times of capital projects, these really intense, impactful projects? We wanted to create resources, tips for success, and then test it with the businesses. So I'm going to show you what we came up with. So this is our toolkit that we put together. We call Open for Business. Try to have a positive light. And again, this is the picture of Walnut Street. This was an example of some of the marketing and collaborative campaigns that they did. They all did some window murals for this, and then they had some activities tied to it. So I'm just going to kind of scroll through without making everybody sick. So just quickly, and I think you'll all have access to download these as well, so you can save for your own files if that's helpful. We wanted to add some legitimacy to this, and so we have a letter from our mayor and city manager just to talk about the importance of business engagement and how we got here. The next piece is really some tips, ways to be proactive for the businesses, how to kind of have some ownership around it. There's some tips on here that the Walnut Street businesses did, so we really had an opportunity to glean from them and what worked well. I wanted to say too, on this piece, we initially had some pieces like you should, or you should do this, and we really got feedback that it's never good when a city tells a business what they should be doing. And so we tried to be really mindful of the language we used here, and so really wanted to focus on what's worked well for people in the past. And then we have a list of businesses, resources and tools. So just some general information, that we compiled all in one place. So what happens if there's a power outage? How can you report a concern? What are the engineering projects going on? And you'll see one of our short-term strategies that we're hoping to accomplish is to have all of this in one spot. So if you are a business owner or a resident, you're like, wow, there's a lot of construction projects going on. You shouldn't have to determine if it's an engineering project or a utilities project. It's all in one spot. Right now, we're just not there yet. People are groups, so there's a lot of business associations in town. So just making sure that our businesses know of what resources are available to them, what other groups they can plug into, and then other just supportive resources like the Small Business Development Center. There's a lot of businesses that still aren't aware that exists. We also have, economic health, our own office, sales tax, data requests. We provide free data requests when we can, and so just things like that. The business librarian, wherever people can go, Colorado Enterprise Fund or Colorado Lending Source if they're looking for those microloans as well. And then we added a case study. So again, wanted to show legitimacy in that this is Walnut Street went from really a place of challenge to great opportunity and working together. They did some marketing campaigns together, launched a website. Windows on Walnut, that's what that live painting window artist was doing. They did some scavenger hunts, those types of things. So really came together to make that happen. And then a glossary of terms. So it can be overwhelming when you're going through a project like this. So just understanding that there might be some terms there that they're not familiar with. And then last, we just had an area where businesses could jot down what's working, what's not, and then, do they have recommendations? Because sometimes we get the best ideas from them and how we can be all constantly improving. So that's really, it is high level because each project is going to be different. Each part of town is going to be different. And so we still needed to keep it generic enough where that project manager doing that project could provide more specific information around that particular project. So, so that was phase one. Phase 2 and 3 have really become morphed into one, but our goal was to take another task force internally and create consistencies among the project managers. And then also another huge piece of this is how are we then talking to our development community when it's a private project? We have less control over that as far as how they do engagement, but can we start to inform or give them examples of what we're doing that seems to be working? So we took the toolkit out that I just showed you to businesses just to test to see, is this helpful? And so we asked them 3 questions. What do you need most, money or other resources? Obviously, money was something. Businesses either want to be reimbursed, they want to have tax deferment. Those are things that we just can't do right now, but we are exploring a support fund where we could do a collective amount of money and share it with that neighborhood or that small strip of businesses that might be able to pool to do something around marketing. Economic impact reports, and better support and promotion and signage. Again, we asked, is this helpful? What would make it more helpful? So that one-stop shop I talked about, maybe a hotline or a landing page. And then how to get the word out was really more about partner organizations and utilities. There's a lot of communication, obviously, in their billing and those types of things. So putting more emphasis on that. And then we had to tackle this internal piece. So really our internal efforts came down to 3 portions. We have multiple projects. You could have capital projects. You could have, Excel could come in and be doing a project. You might have a contractor. It could be a private development. We are in the process of launching community broadband. So we now have a 5th utility in Fort Collins. And so that is basically on a rolling construction constant piece around the community, and we're not heavily promoting that because they are afraid of competition, and so that people don't get a lot of notice on those either. So there's a lot of things happening here, and so I wanted to bring up the tools for that. We also put together a checklist so project managers could say, how impactful is this going to be? Because one of the things we've also noticed is that just because a project is small doesn't mean it's not going to have impact. So a small project can still have heavy impact. And so I think determining that just based on the size isn't always the best way to go about that. And then we put a summary report together. So our recommendations, we created some short-term and long-term strategies. And that's a bear to read. So you could read that, in your nighttime bedtime reading. So here's this checklist that I referred to. So this is really a way that you can go through and say, how impactful is my project going to be? One of the things that I wanted to highlight is location. So is this project downtown or is it in Campus West? Those are probably our 2 most vulnerable areas right now. And so if you have a project downtown or in Campus West, you probably have to do a lot more engagement than you might think in those areas because there's a lot of fatigue right there. There's a lot of construction fatigue in those areas. So just being mindful of that. Does this project impede with the railroad, or is CSU involved, or is Poudre School District? And so really just being thoughtful. That's the name of the game for us, is helping our project managers be thoughtful when they're about to do something. And then they can, have an opportunity to jot down stakeholders and then some kind of high-level communication and outreach tools. And then these are the processes. So process elements, again, this would be for capital projects. So you can see on the left-hand column all the different processes or where in the construction phase things might be happening, all the way into planning and when we're writing the budget offer for this, trying to take in some of these considerations. What are our city efforts during that particular time in the process? And then what are some opportunities for communication during that piece as well? And so this just gives our project managers some ideas you know, not all of this is hard and fast. Every project is different, but at least it gives everybody a starting point. So streets, parks, utilities, we hadn't involved forestry, and we realized that pretty quickly. We have a lot of big trees in Fort Collins and around CSU too, and so when they have to do maintenance on those or cut a tree down, it really can impact traffic. And so what does that do as well? Development projects, again, this one can be tricky because we can't dictate all the time the kind of engagement they're doing, but if we can try to influence some of that, then that's a win. And then even trickier is, you know, kind of non-city utilities like Xcel. So we actually have started to give developers and contractors this checklist when they come in for to pull their permits. And Xcel, I'm happy to say, actually filled one out and returned it. So they actually filled out this checklist here, which we felt like was a win, because then at least, you know, they're being thoughtful and understand what we're trying to accomplish here. And then last, this giant document is really capturing the institutional knowledge that we've gleaned, research we've done. We wanted to put it all in one spot. I won't go through it all because it's many pages, but you can kind of see how we got here. And then at the end, there's information and the strategies we've identified, both short-term and long-term, about where do we go next. So you can take a look at that. And then I have a little bit in my slides as well. So just a quick example, I wanted to highlight Willow Street. This is just north of Old Town Square. It's really in the River District, which is an up-and-coming area of our downtown. Lot of older buildings along here, lack of infrastructure. So this last year, we redid the road here. We added parking. Some parts of the road didn't have sidewalks, very inadequate lighting. Just not a place that you would want to walk probably at night. Hard for customers to park at some of the various businesses. And so this road was actually closed going westbound for 2 or 3 months while they did all of that work. Very significant impacts. Meanwhile, three different multi-unit family projects are housing projects are going in, if you can believe it, on this street as well. And so just a really growing area of our downtown. And this project manager really took the work we're doing with the toolkit to heart. Her name's Nicole. She is a project manager that you want on your team for sure. There's a wedding venue and like an events venue on the right that you can't see, but she helped brides carry balloons and made maps for people. Fort Collins Comic Con was hosted just down the road at one of the community centers there, and they added extra signage and made extra maps for them, and really went above and beyond with boots on the ground every single day. Xcel was out there, so you know, trying to work between Xcel and the contractors and doing whatever she could so that the businesses had as little impact as they could, with still having one entire lane closed. So that was a big win for us, I felt like. Slide. So really next steps for us, continue to educate staff. It's still something that we're constantly trying to message out and support, especially as we bring on new project managers, just trying to acclimate them with this culture shift. Continuing to share out with impacted and vulnerable businesses. Another street in our downtown is going to be undergoing major construction this summer. We're turning Linden Street, which is, I don't know if you've been in Fort Collins, it comes straight out of Old Town Square. They're turning it into what is called a convertible street, so getting rid of curbs and gutters, and it's just going to be one level, so there won't be that step. It'll just be a consistent road and pavers across the way, making it more accessible for pedestrians during events. But changing diagonal parking to parallel. So a lot of outreach is going into this project. And then we're actually working on a budget offer to create a construction mitigation initiative. So this would provide, what we're hoping is another staff person and then kind of a support fund or a problem solving budget where they can help direct strategy for project managers who might need some help in the engagement space. They would be constantly working on relationship building, looking ahead at what projects do we have coming in the next 2 to 3 years. How can I get out there and support those businesses? And then also identifying if we can take a percentage of each capital project and dedicate that to engagement, kind of like our Art in Public Places fund. So we spoke with the city of Seattle, and they're actually exploring, they're doing this. They are much bigger than us, of course, but it's something that we want to look at. They're taking 1% of each capital project and putting it into a fund that can help support staff and kind of this problem-solving idea. So for us, this would be kind of a navigator or an integrator, someone that can bring all those departments together, make sure engagement is happening well and consistently. I won't spend a lot of time here. You can read it in the recommendations report, but again, our list of short-term and long-term strategies. So this toolkit of resources, that was kind of first and foremost out of the gate. And then some of the other things is early communication when we're talking to developers at their development construction permit meetings, just getting them to understand that engagement is very important, and it's helpful to businesses to know, everything from where that crane's going to sit to where are they going to have their contractors park, all of those types of details. Staff, stakeholder, and training, better communication to promote the toolkit internally as well as externally. Some long-term strategies that we've identified, again, kind of that early communication at the beginning for those developers, a central location for all of our projects, and just the ability to enhance the communication across the organization and the city. This is really a relationship building activity, and so it's hard to put hard and fast metrics on it. One of the things that we have come up with is, can we take a look at sales tax reports for that area before, during, and after? Is there a way that we can intervene if we see a dip? Satisfaction and complaints, of course. So we have something called a STAR in Fort Collins. It's a service area request, and that is something that came through City Council. So it's kind of all hands on deck if we get one of those. So if we have a project where we're not getting stars or these complaints, then maybe we've done made some good progress there. How we're debriefing or just meeting with those businesses pre, during, and post project. Again, is council engaged? Do they know what's going on? Are they getting complaints from their district? Project delay and on-time delivery, of course, just like this Linden Street project I mentioned. There was a lot of businesses interested in how that parking is going to change, and so it kind of helped pivot in what way that project was going. One also big thing, again, is, as I mentioned at the beginning, is do businesses feel respected? Are all stakeholders have an opportunity to share their voice? And, have we engaged with people more than those that come to the business association meetings? Also, sometimes the landlord, the person that owns the building, might not live in the city or the state, and then they're leasing to the business owner. So have we been able to engage with that building owner as well? And then challenges and lessons learned. This has been, as I said, quite a journey. There's been a lot. We're still on this. We're still learning and growing. We have our construction toolkit team meets now every other month. We were meeting every month, and then we give everybody the summer off just because that's when construction is in full swing. But I think the three that I wanted to talk about the most was really identifying internal opportunities. That is just as important as external, if not more. I think for the business community, they want to see that we're listening and we're making changes and we're focused on process improvement. So I think trying to get something out there for them was a quick win for us. But at the same time, if we don't have everybody on board internally, or we don't have these processes set up, whatever we put out to the business community doesn't matter, because then it's not working on the inside. And so really making sure we have that cleaned up internally. Promoting specific areas of town, that's also been a challenge for us. And so, if there's a downtown project or something at Campus West, we're really trying to promote hey, you know, don't stay away. I think it's easy in the paper to say, stay away from this part of town, cone zone, watch out, for safety reasons or headaches. But at the same time, you know, we're also trying to say, no, please go patron those businesses. They need us right now. But have been accused of promoting specific parts of town more than others. And so just something to be mindful of and what the culture is of your specific community. Signage and creativity. We were talking about this just before the webinar started. We have some pretty, our sign code is pretty limited. And so, which is great because then, you know, there's a lot of conformity in Fort Collins and things look a certain way, but at the same time, when we're going through construction, you know, we want to be, our department or our toolkit team wants to be able to support those businesses and extra signage, but we haven't gotten to the point where we have a lot of leniencies in that space. And so we'll have to, there's some great examples out there that we found of communities doing some really creative signage and pop culture references. And so I would encourage you to do that if your community allows that kind of creativity. Upfront expectations with developers. So again, this is a space that can be tricky, but just trying to message that to them again and again, and the importance. We, in the Campus West area, we invited the person that was leading the project there, the foreman, the construction foreman, invited him to their association meetings every month so that he could give an update. And then they could hear firsthand where they're at with timelines and deadlines and why these barricades are in the roads still, and when they plan to move them. And so I think that was really helpful and to add some transparency. Again, that safety, balancing that with business concerns can be challenging when you're, you know, a PM, a project manager, is their ultimate goal is to get that project done safely, on time and on budget. And when we add the business engagement in, it could be seen as a wrench in that process. And so how are we balancing that? Staff buy-in kind of goes along with that as well, is, you know, just how can you message that in a way that your staff can relate, especially those that aren't tasked with business engagement on a day-to-day basis. Resources, time and money, that's been a challenge as well. Obviously, I think probably for any municipality, one of our ideas is to institute potentially a lane rental fee. So if anyone is going to be taking up part of the right-of-way or disrupting that, such as an outside contractor, we would be charging them a daily fee. And then our goal would be to put that in a pot so that we could create a business support fund where then when we are heavily impacting an area, we can kind of pool some dollars for marketing efforts or events or something like that to help those businesses as a whole. We can't do that individually, because we do get those requests, but that's just not something that we can commit to. And then really, I just wanted to say that there's no finish line to this. Business engagement never ends. We still have a lot of work to do. As you can see, our short-term and long-term strategies are still out there, something for us to glom onto. We are getting great executive support, and I think that's a great place to start. So if we didn't have that, this work would be much harder. But because we have that executive support, we have city council support, because it's been highlighted in the media, it's easier to make progress in this space. That's it for my slides. Happy to take questions, happy to share these resources, happy to talk to you on the phone at another time if this is something your community is also working in. Happy to help.
Shannon, that was a lot of information to cover in a really short time. I see, Callie, you put on there you'd love to have a copy of the checklist. Absolutely. We are going to have this webinar loaded up on our website for reference, but Shannon was kind enough to give us copies. I think the checklist are absolutely incredible resources and a reminder to everyone to really, really, really engage their community. And let them know right at the get-go when disruptions are going to happen, how long they're going to take. Businesses will work with you and be understanding if they're aware.
Right.
So we will get that out to you. Just shoot me an email, anyone else, if you want me just to email that to you directly. If you have other questions, go ahead and type them into the box, and we'll address those. We do have a few minutes left, and we'll wait a few minutes to see if any of those come through. Tracy, do you have any comments that you want to make?
I don't think so. Thank you so much for joining us, Shannon. I think that this is good information, and yeah, public engagement in general is a never-ending story, and yeah, even after everything might be checked off and you've got the short-term and long-term goals, I'm sure you'll go back to the businesses again.
Right.
And check in and change those things because things change,
right.
You know.
Right.
There might be a whole new different form of communicating in 5 years.
Right.
We don't know
Absolutely.
about it. It's gonna work out, and so yeah, I think it is just that there is no finish line.
Right. Yeah. And it's not check the box, you know, just like you said, like you have to keep going back and checking in, and some of it has really great things that come out of it. Business owners that were never engaged with the city are now engaged. They sit on boards and commissions because they kind of got a flavor of how they can influence what we're doing. And we were talking about the opportunity of choice as well. And so even if it's a small piece, if you can give businesses a choice and have them weigh in, you know, some projects we can say, do you want a full closure for 2 months? Or do you want a partial lane closure for 6 months? Not every project can provide those options, but if there's something that you can give them that makes them feel like they are weighing in or have some ownership around it, and that they were heard, I think that goes a really long way.
I also thought the part about the internal communications, making sure that the people doing the construction, your utility crew, your public works crew, is on board with all of this as well. There's different audiences, different messages, but it does need to be a team approach for it to work.
Well, we do have a question that came in, and it is, what was your most successful business support initiative during construction? Was it window art, events? I'm just curious at what really worked.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the window art, that was actually, I would say what we're trying to do is, we're not at a point again where we have all of these funds where we can create campaigns. We're really just trying to open up those lines of communication. And so those campaigns that I showed you, those were all done by the businesses themselves. So they came up with that. They did the window art, they did the scavenger hunt, and then they also had some support from the Downtown Business Association, which I think was key because they can engage kind of these outside governmental organizations to help with that. We're still in this spot where if we were, doing heavy marketing of a specific area, then we're favoring one business or one part of town over the other. So I feel like we're still trying to work through that. So you're not going to see heavy marketing campaigns or promotions from the city specifically. Really for us right now, we're just trying to open up those channels, and if we can provide leniencies, like I talked about with sign code, or just that communication or options and how the project proceeds, that's kind of where our role is. So I hope that helps. But there are some great examples from Walnut Street, and that's our biggest message when we go out to when we're about to do a project, is to encourage those businesses to mobilize. So that we haven't seen that from all parts of town, and it makes such a difference, I think, from a resident perspective. If I'm going to go support a part of town and I see that they're all working together and they've got these great campaigns and activities happening, I want to go support them. But if nobody's working together, it's hard to know that that's even something I should be doing, and then my perception is more of I should stay away because there's a lot of cones over there. And so I think really messaging that to those businesses to work together more is a big piece of it.
So another question, Shannon. How far ahead do you alert businesses to an upcoming project?
That's good. I think not everybody sees eye to eye on that. For us, we want to tell businesses when it is approved in the budget. So we do a 2-year budget cycle. So right now we will be writing budget offers for projects for 21, 22. We know that there's a lot of downtown stormwater replacement that's going to have to happen in the next, they're anticipating 3 years. So for us, we say get out there early and often. Some people think that if you do it too early, then you're creating an opportunity for people to worry and panic too early before things are even set in place. So I feel like you really just have to figure out what's best for your community. You know, if your community is very reliant on tourism, that you might need to do some heavy engagement early on. And so I think for us, we're getting earlier and earlier. And again, I think for us, it's going to be once this is approved in the budget. So potentially 2 years, which might sound crazy, but if your street's going to be closed for 3 months, I think we owe it to the businesses to let them know that. It also gives an opportunity, like one of our businesses on Linden Street is trying to create a temporary patio in the back so they can help bring more people into their business. They're a bar, so they have a little bit of patio space in the front, but they're trying to create a space where they can add more patio space in the back on a temporary basis during this. And so I think also that gives them an opportunity to go through the development review process, work with our Poudre Fire Authority to mitigate, you know, what do we need to do when we're adding more people in the back, a new exit, those types of things. So I think that gave them the opportunity to go through that process. If we would have waited, they wouldn't have been able to do that, and they would have missed that opportunity.
That's creative thinking. I like that. Do you have some type of celebration when all of the construction is over and business is open as usual? Have you worked with the businesses on any of that? You know,
it seems so anticlimactic when the road opens again. My vision is that, you know, we have a ribbon and the mayor's cutting that, and then cars can drive through and everybody's, you know, jumping up and down. But typically what happens is the road just opens one day and people just start driving on it. I think that's something that post-celebration and making an opportunity for media placement, you know, to get that out, I think is a great idea. We just haven't glommed onto that yet, I think. So, and that's, I think, something that the business community can really do and make a big deal. Yeah. And invite people back, you know, get them back into that space.
Mitigation opening.
Yes, yeah, we're back. We are back.
I see a few other people have asked for the checklist. I definitely, since Shannon, you gave those to me.
Yeah.
Can I send those out
absolutely.
as is?
Yep, I think so.
If that's okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I believe they'll be able to edit those and maybe change them.
Oh, yeah, I would suggest that. So, yeah, we have a watermark on it, but I would say modify it as you see fit for your community. We did a lot of research when we were doing this and trying to get ideas from other communities as well, and there were a few that were very helpful for us. So if this can help anybody else in Colorado, we're happy to do that. I wish somebody had given me
something to start with.
Yeah, so absolutely.
Well, Callie, this is a great closing comment. I'll see if I missed anyone here. Callie from Wellington.
Oh, yeah.
They are headed into a big season of capital improvement projects, and she's saying thank you very much, Shannon, for sharing.
And we're close, so if you ever want to chat more, we can get together.
Deidre's also saying super useful info and process.
She's from Ridgeway.
And she is from Ridgeway, Colorado.
Great.
They lived through a very long season of their roads being paved.
Oh.
From dirt roads.
Right.
Through about a 2-year project with CDOT. Anyone else have any last minute questions? Well, we can still have time to field maybe one or two. I will definitely send out all of these tools to you guys this afternoon. Glad you guys took some time out of your day to join us on this. When I saw these resources, Shannon, I definitely knew of a few communities, Wellington, Woodland Park, Ridgeway that had lived through this pain with their businesses. And so anything we can do to help them in their educational process of where do we start, what do we do, how do we do better? 'Cause
Right.
there's always
Right.
something that you forget
Absolutely.
along the way and something that you can do better. So,
And then if anyone on the call has any great ideas that they're doing, I'd love to hear that too. I think there's probably a lot of great things happening that we don't know about either, so.
Oh, Melanie just
Oh.
shared, brush lived through pain. And then Deidre, we will be building Space to Create at some point as well. That's right. Which will be
co-working?
another pain process.
Okay. Yes, we have to support
Lots
each
of
other.
kudos on here, Shannon, thank you.
Absolutely.
Anyone else having some closing comments? Tracy, do you have any closing comments?
My pleasure. It's emotional work. I've
Yeah.
shed some tears over this, but
Well, and it's never ending.
it's never ending, though.
And we've also recorded this, so if you wanted other people to see it or share it, we should have it up on the website probably in the next week or so.
You bet. And feel free to email Tracy and I, if you're not on this list here, to send out the resources. We will definitely do that for you. And again, Colorado Main Street program thanks everyone that is on the line here today in taking some time out of their schedule to learn about new tips and tricks and tools, and particularly to Shannon for coming down and spending some time with us and sharing your resources with our community.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, that's it. No more comments. We will let everybody get back to their day. Thank you.